BBC Two now remembers a legend, one of the greatest Formula One racing drivers ever, who many still can't believe is gone. Ayrton Senna.
We are right with Michael Schumacher now, and Senna! My goodness! I just saw him plunge off to the right. What on earth happened there? I don't know.
Tamburello at Imola. Even before May the 1st, 1994, it was well known as one of the most challenging high-speed corners in motor racing. It had the respect of drivers, especially those who drove with passion and with courage. Ayrton Senna wasn't just one of that breed, he was the best of that breed. And when Ayrton came off and hit the wall here while leading the San Marino Grand Prix, a supreme motor racing talent was lost forever. The shock wasn't just confined to Formula One or to his native Brazil, but it was a sporting loss that was felt worldwide.
He was a genius, there's no doubt about it. And it's my interpretation of a genius as somebody who's just this side of being slightly unbalanced in some area, and I think he was in danger of tipping over the top in some respects, but because he was so talented and he was so intelligent that he was always able to just keep it in the right place.
When I thought that I was committed 100% or 99% for Formula One, because the 1% missing is maybe my family or my children or a different way of life, he was committed 110%.
No, his biggest strength was mentally. I mean, he had a kind of concentration different than all of us. He could find in himself such a high concentration. What made him making sometimes a work where nobody could understand how he could do it.
Even before Ayrton Senna's death, it had been a tragic weekend here. When Roland Ratzenberger was killed on the Saturday, it was the first fatality in Formula One for some 186 Grand Prix. And then Ayrton's crash and other race day incidents added overwhelmingly to the desperate atmosphere. But the purpose of this program isn't to analyse what went wrong for Ayrton Senna. Why did he crash? That will never be clearly known. Instead, we'll try to weigh up the scale of his talent and the size of his loss to the sport. Ayrton Senna, a breathtaking driver to watch and a compelling man to listen to.
Few people really do know myself. Few people know me. And they just don't understand what it takes from a racing driver that has dedicated all his life, since I'm in this thing somehow, since 4 years old, to activity. Somebody that has left behind thousands of miles away family and friends to live in Europe and go through all the steps to eventually come to Formula One. And being so young and in a way successful, of course, always in a fighting way. Nothing ever has come to me easy.
Mais c'est vrai que ce week-end on a vécu une véritable tragédie. Ayrton Senna, on avait oublié, peut-être un peu vite ou tout au moins on s'était...
Racing driver Ayrton Senna has been killed in the San Marino Grand Prix.
セナなくして今の日本のこの F1 の人気はなかったんじゃないかというそんな気がする。
He died doing something that he desperately wanted to do, and I don't think he would have wished it any other way.
He was special. I mean, he was not one step, he was 2 steps better than everyone else.
I thought he was bulletproof, and I mean, it hurt big time.
Of his generation, Senna was the best.
Senna did have to win at all costs, because the only thing in life that interested Senna was winning.
I will always remember a guy different than everybody else.
It meant something to the world. It didn't mean just something to our little world of motor racing. It was Nelson Mandela in South Africa, and Ayrton Senna's died.
I was perfectly all right at Ayrton's funeral until I went to pay my respects to his mother. And then suddenly the horror of it came.
3 years with him, believe me, I was thinking day and night how I can beat this guy, and usually you always find weakness on the teammate, and then you start to work on this weakness, to increase his weakness and to make you strong at these points. And with him I didn't find anything. He was quick in qualifying, he was unbelievable quick in the racing, consistent quick. He was quick in overlapping, he was quick in the rain, he was quick in street circuits, he was quick in quick circuits. So finally I sit there and say, shit, how am I going to beat this guy?
He just finished his race at Donington and he won it, and he wanted to get back and see his friend Ritsu Gugelmin, who he was sharing a house with at the time, race here in Formula Fords. I had a company, Mazda at the time, and Harry said, right, I'm driving. And this was driving with his race suit on, and he probably still had the garland around his neck, and we set an all-time record for getting from Donington to here. And I had to pick up a book and put it in front of my face, because I've never been so terrified in my life, because he would go into roundabouts like he goes into this corner here, flat, then sorts it out. Oh. And I said, well, what if a tractor comes out of a side turning? Couldn't happen. He's Senna. Wasn't going to happen to him. Yeah, okay. And we got here, and the Mazda never really went properly again after that. That was it.
I was out on the circuit. I just completed a qualifying run, and I was coming in. I saw a car in the mirrors coming, very, very quickly indeed. I realised that it was a car on a qualifying lap. It was black. There was the familiar yellow helmet in my mirrors, so it was Senna on a committed lap. I gave him all the space I had, and he came through. And it was in the part of the circuit at Brands Hatch, Dingle Dell, out of Westfield Bend, down into Dingle Dell, then up Dingle Dell into Dingle Dell Corner. And something, I just sat there gobsmacked, because I'd done what I had done, wherever it was in the grid, and here was a guy in a car, and that car to me was dancing. It was like rain just dancing off a pavement. He had control of the car, yet he had the car running in a way was just, I thought, well, there's a clear signal, if there ever needed one, to say that my time as a Grand Prix driver effectively was finished. Because I realized at that point, here's a man doing things which I hadn't even thought of, let alone put into effect.
"65 pole positions, 41 Grand Prix wins, world champion in 88, 90 and 91. He was awarded every accolade in the sport, including that of the greatest driver of his generation. A lot is known about his achievements, but it's hard to comprehend the single-minded dedication that took him to the top. It made him a millionaire many times over. It made him the hero that Brazilians were desperate for. Self-confident, self-absorbed, and there'd be times in his Grand Prix career when he'd show a reckless self-belief behind the wheel. 10 years ago, Formula One had clearly found its new star. Toleman provided his entry point into Grand Prix racing. Lotus provided the breakthrough. In 1985, a supreme victory in the wet of Estoril. But many wins on British racetracks had gone before as the young Brazilian progressed through the junior categories of Formula Ford and Formula 3.
I remember when I first met him, it was in the race at Nürburgring when they had all these new Mercedes, and they had all drivers you could think of, Fangio and Brabham. I mean, everybody was there from Australia and from America and so on. And who won it? A guy I'd never heard of, like this man called Senna. And I said, well, what's he do? And somebody said, well, he's in Formula Ford or whatever. I can't remember what it was now. And yet he started there, and from that moment he just continued to rise until, of course, he got to where he was, a position that is, in my opinion, only equal, probably, maybe by Fangio.
I am just 22-year-old, and there is plenty of time to get Formula One if I will get there. Cannot be sounding true, but I start with 4 years old in go-kart. My father made a special one, very small obviously, and up to 13 years old I was just going around, practicing. I enjoy very much, always motor racing. Last year was my first season in cars, in single-seaters. I never tried before.
It's too cold for him over here. That was the main problem. He would never really get out of bed till lunchtime to test. And then he refused to actually go out until his gloves were put on the radiators to warm them up. He'd had a lot of grounding in karts. He had his first kart when he was 4.5. His father bought him. And it was just easy for him. He could come into the pits at any time and say that the right-hand front tyre needed a pound more pressure. So he didn't have to worry about the steering wheel and the gear lever and stuff that a lot of other people have to worry about.
Well, on top of the results he was piling up almost every weekend, he was a very motivated young man, a bit different to his colleagues of a similar age. He lived in the Reading area at that time, which meant he was only about 5 or 8 miles from my home. So I think my wife and I took him out for dinner half a dozen times in 1983, tried to make him feel a bit more at home in that part of the world. And in our conversations, which I think tended to make my wife a little bit bored, it was only about motor racing, it came across how intense he was about his career.
British motorsport first saw Senna involved in intense competition in 1983. His rivalry with the young Martin Brundle making the British Formula 3 Championship that year a classic. Brundle went well in the second half of the season, but Senna had dominated the first half with a record 9 straight wins.
Ayrton's a bit of an exception. If he hadn't have been here this year, I'd be looking rather good at the moment, having won 7 or 8 races.
Left 15 completed into lap 16, and the monotonously, almost boringly successful Ayrton Senna from Brazil is, as we are used to seeing him, very much in the lead on this, the 16th lap in the 20-lap Formula 3 Championship Round 5. And struggling along in his wake, as ever, very successfully but not successfully enough, is the ever hard-trying Martin Brundle in the blue Eddie Jordan wrought Toyota. There he is.
I learned from the Formula 3 days, particularly the colour of his crash helmet was very bright colour scheme. And he took no prisoners whatsoever. You could clearly see him coming up behind you, and he very often left you to decide whether or not you were going to have an accident with him. He put his car in a position to overtake you, and it happened to me in Formula 3 many times, and we did have many accidents because I wouldn't let him through.
When he came to us, Martin was one of those drivers who needed a degree of help in terms of, he always kept telling himself, and we kept telling him, Martin, you can take him. At this stage, obviously, no one realised how good that Senna was going to be. So it was easier to accept it. There was no, if you like, big reputation about it. Here was just another Brazilian who was obviously going to be good, but not to the level that we now know.
A significant day, Senna's first drive in a Formula 1 car, courtesy of Williams, Donington, 1983. Other tests would follow with Tolman, Brabham and McLaren, but this moment was special.
We'd run a lot there with the car that year with our regular drivers, and on lap 11, his first time out in a Grand Prix car, he equalled the best time that car had done in other hands. And on lap 23, he was about a second. He was a second a lap faster than the car had gone. At that point, he came in, stopped and said, I think I've had enough today. I want to go home and think about what I've done, and left.
We were both invited to test a Formula 1 car for McLaren. A magnificent event. It was McLaren number 8, which ironically 10 years later I would race in Formula 1. He drove first, and Stefan Beloff was also there. Sadly, they're both dead now, and myself. And I'll never forget Senna screaming past the pits, blue smoke pouring out of the back. I stood beside Ron Dennis at the time, although he wouldn't know or remember. And Senna just kept his foot in until he passed the point where it was being timing, jumped out and wanted to know what the lap time was because he felt it was his best lap. I very clearly remember Ron Dennis saying, I find it very difficult to press a stopwatch when my car is in flames and throw pouring smoke out the back. Ayrton. But somehow they put another engine in it, and Ayrton negotiated a second go in the car because we'd all done very, very similar lap times, and of course he went significantly faster with a second opportunity. And it always impressed me how he, at such an early age, had that kind of head on him, that kind of maturity to know what the right thing to do was.
An early marriage was sacrificed to his racing ambitions, and as these progressed, the total support of his parents remained. Through Formula 3, Formula 1 and on to the World Championship title itself, his family and his country remained paramount in his mind. Even in the karting days, the yellow helmet and indeed the driving style were easy to spot. And he was keen that the Brazilian flag should become as familiar on the race circuits and television screens of the world. Maybe even more than Pelé, he'd become Brazil's greatest sporting hero, and certainly its greatest ambassador.
I was born here, and the things I know, as the fundamental things of life, I learn here. I learn with my family, with my friends, with my teachers at school, by living day by day, experience the incredible atmosphere that Brazil has got.
really a fan. I'm very excited. You know who that is? Senna, right? All right.
Hello, everybody. Everybody have a good time.
Somehow, somewhere in the world, you know, our flag goes up whenever we manage to win or do well. And that is seen by people as a positive thing, as a good thing. And I suppose that counterbalance a little bit to the social problems, the difficulties and the bad publicity that some of the problems that we have here get outside Brazil.
Inicialmente, até uma ideia que surgiu.
Initially, we thought of just giving up everything, giving up all the businesses. But then, thinking about Ayrton's wishes, he had talked about making some sort of social contribution in a more organized way than he had done before, because he used to be very discreet about it. So we decided to continue all the projects that had already been started and to use his image to help people, even after his death, just as he had helped people before, especially in Brazil, just by being himself through his values and attitudes. Ayrton was a person who cared very much about quality, organization, and doing things in the best way possible. That's why he had the idea of setting up an institution, and the logical thing to do was to set up a foundation.
A lógica foi fazer uma fundação.
In 1988, the partnership between Senna and Ron Dennis at McLaren had begun. Lotus had given him pole positions and victories, but McLaren gave him a championship chance, and that year he'd take it after an acrimonious battle with teammate Alain Prost. And Ayrton was equally determined to establish himself among the highest earners in the sport. When it came to contract negotiations, he was a determined opponent for Ron Dennis, who can claim at least one victory.
He was incredibly tough, even in those early days. In the end, we just came to a complete stalemate over the last $500,000. So I suggested that we actually flicked a coin for the $500,000. He didn't even understand what that meant, and on having it explained that this was just purely the simplest way to break the deadlock, I then had to draw pictures of a head and a tail to be absolutely sure that there was no doubt as to the interpretation. And so we literally wrote on a piece of paper the rules of this very simple thing, because he still didn't have a complete command of the English language. And I won the toss, as it were, which he never ever forgave me for, and I paid 1,000,000 times for that. I owe 1,000,000 times on this. It was only about 10 days later that it suddenly dawned on him that in fact it wasn't $500,000, it was in fact $1.5 million, because it was a 3-year contract.
I have had all my life a very, very strong and good education. And from that education I have got, again, clear and strong principles in way of behaving. And that's where I'm guided for. I use those lines and those guidelines to move as a man, as a professional. And I don't regret anything. I just feel I'm doing things for the right reason. Some understand, some don't. In the end, you never get everybody to understand and to agree and to accept. But most of them, I'm sure, admire, after all, what I'm doing as a professional and as a man, and as many drivers do. We are exposing our lives, they are consistent. And the reason for it is only one, is to succeed, is to win, is to get the thrill when you cross the finish line in first place.
When you're in a racing car, there is nothing allowed. You don't hear the crowd, you don't see them in the same way as a tennis player, a golf player, and an athlete or anybody else does. And it's a magic carpet.
It isn't just the speed of thought, it is the anticipation of what's coming. I mean, when you come into a corner, you've got to know what you're going to do. You don't drive a corner round the corner, you drive a corner before you get there. In other words, you set the car up, you say, look, this is what we're going to do, and then you compensate on the throttle, and you compensate through the steering, but to a relatively small amount. You have got to come in knowing what you're going to do. You've got to be programmed. And I think that he had the finest chip going, and it was just programmed. Every corner he'd come into, he had the darn thing programmed, and yet, if he had to make a decision in the middle of it, he had the talent to be able to throw the car from one position to another and catch it and hold it and control it.
He seemed to be talking about, well, the road just does this a little bit here in the corner, and then there's a bit that drops away there. And when he described the car, he was describing the contours of the road and in every minute detail, and the way the car behaved.
The worst is the second chicane and the third chicane. But it's because the asphalt goes like this, in the third chicane, and it's like this. In the second chicane you're coming bumpy, and then it's like you go against the ground basically, and the car is really down. You get low grip, it's tough.
And it must have been, to him, like everything was much. It was a sort of slow. It seemed like it was recording in slow motion, and that was fascinating to listen to.
Although I spent 6 years racing against Ayrton in Formula One, it really wasn't until I joined McLaren as a test driver in 1990 that I had the chance to see exactly how fast he was and exactly how he did it. Now, in those days, we go to a European circuit like Monza or Estoril for a 3-day test, and normally I do the first day or two pounding around, getting down to what I thought was a very respectable time before Senna came along, and within 10 laps he would have been a second faster. So how did he do it? Looking at the pictures, it's hard to see. But if we look at data recordings showing just how the driver is using the controls, examples of Senna's technique can be seen. Looking first at braking into a corner, the blue line shows me braking. Compare this with the red line of Ayrton, clearly showing that here he doesn't brake as hard or for as long. The result is that he's going faster into the corner. On acceleration out of the corner, Senna's unique technique is equally obvious. Whereas I would progressively increase the throttle opening, Ayrton would immediately start stabbing at it, pushing to get his foot hard down earlier, and therefore exit faster too. Putting both of these together means that with this example, he pulls out 0.2 of a second through this section alone, and that's just one small part of the whole lap.
But where he was, let's say, mercurial in his driving was that he had the ability, from the moment the light went to green, to be on the pace instantly. A number of drivers tend to take the first lap, let's say, a little bit cautiously, because they haven't got the tyre temperatures maybe up to their full operating temperature. The car's been sitting on the grid for a short period. The tyre pressures likewise. So there's a tendency for drivers to be just that little bit cautious to make sure that the feelings that they have got give them confidence. Senna didn't need that. He was able to go 100% on the opening lap. And if you can do that and open an advantage in the early laps, it demoralizes your opponents, and it gives you then that little bit of barrier between yourself and the cars following. And I think the best example I saw of that, certainly in recent years, was at last year's European Grand Prix at Donington Park.
If I take one lap of all the Grand Prix that I have seen over the years to my grave with me, it's going to be the first lap of the Donington Grand Prix, the European Grand Prix of 1993. When Senna started from 4th on the grid, he didn't make a very good start, he dropped back to 6th, but he was first at the end of the first lap.
Prost gets away well, so does Hill, so does Schumacher. And Wendlinger is coming up well. Senna is crowded out and is down to 5th position. And Wendlinger is up into 3rd place ahead of Schumacher. Brilliant start by the Austrian, the Black Sauber. Prost leads, Hill 2nd, Wendlinger is 3rd. And Ayrton Senna is up to 4th position ahead of Schumacher and challenging Wendlinger as they go round the right-hander into the old hairpin. Senna is up to 3rd.
And after being crowded at the start, a quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna.
Tremendous stuff. He muscled his way back into the contention and Senna into second place already. And he's giving it absolutely everything in the wet part of the race.
And Senna goes through into the lead. He's passed Alain Prost, so the McLaren leads. Prost second, Hill is third. A tremendous gap between the third and fourth cars.
Senna going away, but I expect that Damon Hill will be looking for a way past his team leader Alain Prost, who doesn't like the wet and won't be in a hurry.
It was great. It was great. We lapped everybody.
Yeah.
And we could have won the race with one lap over everybody. It didn't happen in the end because we just slowed down, but it could have been that way. So I don't remember a Grand Prix that was won in such a style. And there you go. It was one of these days that everything came together between the driver and the team and the circumstances on the circuit, the pit stops, the information, the strategy. And there you put together this incredible, fascinating result.
Formula One is a physical challenge as much as a challenge of confidence and character. Senna made sure he was supremely fit. And while his confidence was sustained by success, his character was shaped by his rare mistakes. And there were few mistakes more character-forming than what happened at Monaco, 1988.
The number one in Formula One at that time was Alain Prost, man that he wanted to beat, one that he wanted to become like it and better. He was driving the same car on the same team.
Monaco 1988, he didn't win. Funny, I don't remember Senna for winning at Monaco that year because he didn't. I remember Senna for one of the very, very few mistakes through loss of concentration he made.
And that particular year, Alain was, he was leading the race. Alain was second behind Gerhard. By the time he went by, Ayrton had something like 56 seconds in front. But the moment he saw Alain was second, and then see Alain pulled something like 6 seconds in one lap to him, he panicked, and then Ayrton made the fastest lap in the race. And I remember Ron shouted to him, "Stop, stop, slow down. It's not going to catch you. It's only 6 laps. Slow down." Of course, slow down wasn't in his vocabulary. The next lap, did another fastest lap and then crashed.
He was so upset, appalled, distressed by what had happened, that he got out of the car, he walked back to his apartment in Monaco, which wasn't very far away from where he'd gone up, and he completely disappeared for the rest of the day.
I kept ringing and the telephone didn't ring. Finally, 9 o'clock, the telephone rang, and it was a person, a Brazilian woman that used to look after the flat. So I speak to her in Brazilian and in Portuguese. I said, "I know Ayrton is there. Please let me talk to him." "No, he's not here." "No, I really know he's there. He just doesn't want to talk to anybody. Please tell him his job." Anyway, finally Ayrton come to the phone. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. He still was crying. He just could not believe it. "I don't know what happened. The steering come off my hand."
He was angry at Monaco when he did not win the race, but he did not know against who he was angry, you know. And he was always like this. He wanted to have a fight sometimes. And his best motivation, I mean, the biggest motivation he had is to fight against me and to beat me.
Before he joined McLaren, we both had a week in Austria at the Willy Dungel training center, which is where McLaren send all their drivers to get a fitness check and fitness training program and a dietary program organized. We were out bicycling through the hills in Austria, and he said, "What is McLaren like? You were a teammate of Alain Prost. What do you think about him?" I said, "Well, you know, Alain's a tremendous driver, very clever in the team. The team are truly focused on Prost. Any driver who's been in the team with him really would seem to be the number 2 driver. And I said, when you come into the team, I would suggest that, you feel your way and you get to understand how Alain works and how his favour in the team is established. He said, no, I don't think so. I'm going to go and make myself, first of all, physically and mentally stronger than anybody else in Formula One. And I'm going to make Prost, my teammate, come to me, not me go to him. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to blitz him.
Formula One would never have seen such fearsome motivation. Nigel Mansell was an occasional victim. Alain Prost would be a more consistent rival. Senna and Prost resolved Prost was at Ferrari, and also when Prost was in his final year at Williams. Senna just had to win.
Nothing else was important. He wanted to beat me, but to beat me in a bad way sometimes. And the worst thing we had, in fact, was the 1990 race in Japan. And I was really shocked because he crashed me voluntarily at about 250 kilometers and risking his life too. And I was really, shocked because, say, if you are able to do that, if you can do that, I mean, what is important for you outside motor racing, outside winning a championship?
There is no doubt at all about the fact that in 1990, if he didn't deliberately drive into Prost, he had certainly made his mind up, as he subsequently admitted at that famous press conference in Adelaide. He had certainly decided before the race that because, in his view, he was on the wrong side of the track, he believed that he should have been on the left-hand side of the track because he had taken pole position, and because of the circumstances, Prost was there, and Senna bitterly resented that. And he had said to himself before the race, as he subsequently admitted, I'm going to go for it, and if Prost turns in on me, that's his hard luck.
Not finishing the race quite clearly, he's out of his car, stuck in the gravel pit. That, I'm afraid to say, is the end of this year's Drivers' World Championship in favour of Ayrton Senna. There's Prost running back, but it's all over for him.
Ayrton has a small problem. He thinks that he can't kill himself because he believes in God and things like this, and I think that's very dangerous.
And pole position was set in the wrong place. We agreed before starting qualifying that pole position would be on the outside with the officials. Then Balestre gave the order after qualifying to not change, and I found myself in the wrong side on pole. I was so frustrated that I promised to myself that if after the start I lose the first place, I would go for it in the first corner. Regardless of the result, I would go for it, and Prost wouldn't turn in the first corner ahead of me.
In your mind, it's a psychological thing. You always knew that when Senna was coming to pass you, you had to make your mind up how badly you wanted to finish this motor race, because you knew he was going to be ruthless when he arrived. I'm not saying he was dangerous, I'm not saying he was unfair, I'm saying he established himself as very hard.
Yeah, I think we had one another off a few times. I think he sort of won that battle though, hands down, basically. I think because he's more Latin, I'm a little bit more reserved, and he would do things which I didn't think he would do. And until I sort of put it in my program that he would do them, I kept coming off second best. But, you know, that sort of fixed itself about 7-8 years ago, and since then we've got along, we did get along a lot better.
I made mistakes. You know, I'm not cleaning all of that. I have made mistakes, but one thing that I am sure, the mistakes I have done were in good faith and never in a way of thinking of destroying and damaging others. I'm not so sure if that has been the same case from other people towards to me. And since we are fighting close all the time and competing so hard, we have had our hard times, our difficulties.
Oh, Barcelona was real funny for me because that's when he said to me that I was blip blip crazy.
That you were.
That I was. And I thought, well, okay, it might have taken this long, but now he thinks I'm crazy, so I'm safe.
And there are Senna and Mansell. They have missed the pit entrance, and I'm very surprised that Senna hasn't come for tyres now. He's got Mansell climbing all over him. He has no reason to stay out. I think the tactics should have been for Senna to go for tyres. It's going to be too late. Wheel-to-wheel stuff. Look at this. They're almost touching. Mansell gets in there.
Start and finish line for the last time, and there you have it. 1-2, but a great race.
His relationship with Adriane had deepened. He was relaxed, he was happy. The
difference between a man and a child, as you grow up, you start to have more things to think, more things to worry about, and you lose a little bit of enjoyment in life. So it's important to, whenever you have the opportunity and the place, go back a little bit like a children.
I learned a lot from him, but I could see he learned a lot of me too. He learned maybe to see the life sometimes in a different way. And I tell you, I mean, I remember when I arrived in McLaren, he was so much focused to the job that it didn't go well already. He was too much. And then with me, it doesn't mean he has to work less, but he has to laugh, he has to enjoy a bit more. And he started to take this experience, and he used it, and I could see he got even much stronger in this way.
A possibility for Ayrton to join us re-emerged towards the end of '92, primarily led by him. And I won't forget this because we had a winning car at the time. Well, I remind myself that winning cars are never dominant for very long in Formula One. And Ayrton very much wanted to get in the car for '93, and he just never left me alone. I mean, he was very persistent, very tough-minded. In fact, I occasionally was frightened to go home because the phone would never stop ringing. He knew I was there, so I had to answer. And I get half an hour's conversation, mainly on his side, of why he thought we should put him in the car.
In '94, he arrived. The long-awaited part was on, but Senna failed in the first two races. Round 3 of the 1994 season was Imola, where all the drivers had to come to terms with the death of Roland Ratzenberger in Saturday's qualifying.
He was very preoccupied on Saturday afternoon and evening, and indeed Sunday morning. But Sunday morning he was reasonably relaxed. The last time I saw him was when he picked up some spare overalls and said, "I've got to go and see Gerhard," and trotted off out of the debrief room in the truck.
I had lunch, at the Renault motorhome, and went out of the Williams motorhome and just saw me, and he made a sign, which everybody was very surprised because normally he does not. If he talks to me, okay, I say hello if I cross him. But in the past, I mean, he would never do that, just stop, and then when he saw me, he just made a sign, and he wanted to talk to me, and I was very surprised too. But in the morning, he made a very nice statement on TV, on French TV, but he didn't have his normal attitude. Was very, proud and sure of himself. He was a bit different.
So Ayrton Senna came here to Imola and the San Marino Grand Prix in a rather beleaguered frame of mind. 2 races gone, no points scored. Everyone has their own thoughts about how that Sunday unfolded. I recall standing here in this position on the grid, introducing Grandstand, with the thought that this was the race where Ayrton Senna just had to deliver. And earlier in the week, that had been Ayrton's mood as well.
We are here in this 3rd round. The European season starting now, starting from 0. So basically our championship starts here, 14 races, not 16.
pole position. Michael Schumacher next to him on the grid.
I think
Now,
in particular
in
this
Brazil,
circuit is very suitable for the Williams-Renault-Senna team. And I believe
one of the other big differences that we have here for the third race of the season is that the Imola circuit is the first really fast circuit the 1994 World Championship has come to, with a top speed approaching 205 miles an hour.
Tactics for the race then, and ambitions for the race are what?
Flat out, absolutely flat out. I finished third last year.
So now, with just seconds to go, the grid is being cleared, and we will soon see the cars going round in less than 30 seconds' time now for the first lap.
Nothing lasts forever, but some things end too soon. Now those fields of fascination are just dark and empty rooms. Saudade, saudade.